Welcome back to the Pro Sports Podcasters on YouTube. My name is Cobe. Most of you know me as Kobe. And today I want to take a look at something that obviously all of you that follow the channel know I'm a big fan of, and that's the possibility of kicking some ass in challenges come the NFL season. So today's all about NFL all day, and I want to give you some basic ground rules to follow when you're deciding which moments you should stack for specific challenges on NFL all day. And I'm not going to give you the actual moments. What I'm going to do is just give you some rules to follow, and it's very similar to when you select players for fantasy football as well. And I'll begin with the offensive side of the ball today, and I'll have a follow-up video that covers the defensive side of the ball. But today is all about the offense, and it begins with the man under center, which is the quarterback. And when deciding which quarterback you want to go with for challenges, which ones you should stack, there's a couple of things you really want to factor in. And the first of is just the most obvious, and that's if you can get studs, right? If you can afford to stack a bunch of Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilsons, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, do it, right? Do it. Because these guys are always going to have some great standout games. Week to week, they've got an opportunity to be one of the top 5 performers in the league at their position. So having them stacked in your collection is just a no-brainer. But not everybody wants to do that, and not everybody can afford to do that, because you're talking about players at a position that is at a premium, so you're probably going to have to pay up for the majority of them. So what about quarterbacks you can get at a discount? Which quarterbacks are going to give you the best opportunity to factor into challenges but not cost you in the pocketbook? And with that, it's another sort of simple rule that I follow, and it's you select quarterbacks that have a reliable target or targets. Okay, so someone like a Matt Ryan, right? Matt Ryan, we're talking about a league MVP here, and most people would probably look at him and think, oh, he's a middle-of-the-road quarterback. But no, this guy is the league MVP. But it's why was he a league MVP? And it's because he had fantastic targets, specifically Julio Jones, to throw to. Julio Jones was the best wide receiver at the time. And whenever Matt needed a clutch third down or a reliable target in the end zone, he had Julio Jones. Now he's moved on. He's now with the Indianapolis Colts. Julio Jones is looking for a home currently. But in Indianapolis, he doesn't have that same target. So is someone like Matt Ryan viable this year? You're going to have to wait to see what happens in the rest of the offseason. But that's what I'm looking at. You're looking at a quarterback who has the skill to deliver and at least one real reliable target that he can go to over and over again to make the difference. So there are a couple of examples. Someone like a Tua Tagovailoa. This year, he's got Tyreek Hill as a target. That's huge. That's huge. He was already developing a rapport with Jalen Waddle last year. This is their second season together, so that's an advantage. So Tua, whom a lot of people are going to discount, may actually have a very fantasy relevant, very challenge relevant season this year because of the targets that are available to him. So that's the other thing you should look for. And those are the two primary things to consider when choosing which quarterbacks you want to stack in your collection. Now let's go on to the wide receiver. With wide receivers, it's a little bit different. Of course, the same stud rule applies. It's great to have those stud wide receivers that you know are clutch every single week. But there's more things you have to actually look at when it comes to wide receivers, and first of which is opportunity. How often are these wide receivers targeted in their particular offenses? Because there are some very good wide receivers that may not get the number of targets you're hoping for to really factor in, week out in challenges. Someone like a Cortland Sutton comes to mind for me. He's got the great quarterback now in Russell Wilson. But he also has a number of very fantasy-relevant targets around him. Tim Patrick's going to factor in. Jerry Jeudy's going to factor in. They've now got 2 tight ends. We'll see which one ends up being the primary, but that's going to factor in. You've got pass-catching running backs that are going to factor in. It's a very explosive offense on my favorite team, the Denver Broncos. So even though Cortland Sutton is really a top 10, wide receiver in the league, he may not get top 10 production because of the number of targets that are available to Russell Wilson. So you got to look at that. Then there are wide receivers who are going to get the lion's share of the targets. And they may not even be on fantastic teams. And I'll get into that as well. But when you've got one wide receiver that demands a high portion of the offense, that wide receiver is always going to have good weeks, regardless of how good the offense is. And that's something else you want to look at, is wide receivers tend to get some of their best production on one of two offenses. Either a great offense, like say the Kansas City Chiefs, or a bad offense. Okay? Even bad offenses can produce very fantasy relevant wide receivers because they find themselves in situations playing from behind on poor teams that literally need to throw the ball constantly in order to get back into it. They may not factor in as many touchdowns, but they're going to factor in a lot of receptions and a lot of yards. So you want to look at that as well. So that's also a factor. And of course, you also got to look at the viability of the quarterback, right? That's a key one when it comes to wide receivers. You could have the world's best wide receiver, but if he's got a garbage quarterback throwing him the ball, you can't expect a lot of consistency from that particular wide receiver. So those are the parameters you want to look at. Stud wide receivers on either great or developing teams with a reliable quarterback throwing them the ball. Those are the three key things. Now we'll go on to running backs. And running backs, it's a bit of the opposite here. So you want running backs on great teams, period. You do not want running backs on bad teams. You don't, because they're not going to get nearly enough opportunities to carry the ball because those teams are going to have to look to throw to get back into games. So you want running backs on a team like Los Angeles Rams, like Darrell Henderson is such a great target this year as a running back. You want running backs on the Buffalo Bills. Okay? It's another team that you definitely want a running back on. So that's a key one, right? Even though they have Josh Allen and they become sort of a throw-first offense, the fact that they're going to play with a lot of leads means that running back's going to get a lot of touches, especially late in games. Same thing with the Kansas City Chiefs. Same opportunity. So these are the kind of guys you're after. And of course, the stud rule always applies. Some running backs are just fantastic. So it doesn't matter what team they're on and how great their offense is. And then lastly, you do have a few offenses left that are run-first offenses. And that's like the San Francisco 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks, and Cleveland Browns. Although we'll see what happens with Cleveland now that Deshaun Watson's there. But these are offenses that prefer to run the ball first. One of the best examples of how a running back can benefit if they're on a very good team is Derrick Henry. Not only is Derrick Henry a stud running back, but he was on the number one team in the AFC last year because they play with such strength and power, and they're generally playing with a lead, so Derrick Henry got utilized a lot, and as a result, had all those opportunities that translated into big fantasy and what will be challenge situations. So that's just your perfect example, right? But there are a lot of other running backs that fall into those categories. And when you're looking at just studs and it doesn't matter how the team plays, someone like a Nick Chubb is a perfect example. Nick Chubb is one of the best running backs in the league. And it doesn't matter that the Cleveland Browns are just mediocre. And last year they had Baker Mayfield. In fact, they had an injured Baker Mayfield. So that didn't help things at all. But he still got his because he's just a stud running back. So always look to that as well. Advantage with running backs is that there's quite a few great running backs. You can get a kind of a discount right now because it's not as flashy a position as, say, wide receivers are at this point in the NFL. Now I'll look at tight ends. And I've discussed tight ends on the website, www.prosportspodcasters.com. Tight ends, it's very easy, okay? You're looking at tight end happy offenses, right? Offenses that feature the tight end. Because there are a lot of great tight ends in the league that are on offenses that just won't use them that much. It just won't happen. Because the coach, the scheme doesn't really suit highlighting the tight end. But then you have teams like the Las Vegas Raiders, the San Francisco 49ers, Kansas City Chiefs, where the tight end is everything. It's the most important position on the field outside of the quarterback. And those are the tight ends you want. It's that simple. Outside of that, it's a crapshoot, right? You'll have the occasional boom performance from a tight end, that's not on one of the tight end specific style teams, but otherwise, every single week, those guys are going to get theirs, and they're the ones that you want. So that's what you're looking for flat out in tight ends. And those are the offensive positions, and which specific parameters will lead you to choose the right moments to stack in preparation for the next NFL season. Till next time.